Running a small business means I wear lots of hats. When I put on my hiring hat, I can count on LinkedIn Hiring Pro to make it easy. LinkedIn Hiring Pro helps manage my hiring workflow, puts my job post in front of a unique network of professionals, and matches me with the best candidates for my business. I can also share my job with my network. No other job site lets me do that. No wonder most small businesses say they'd use LinkedIn Hiring Pro again. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free on LinkedIn today at linkedin.com/quality.
¿Escuchan eso? Es el delicioso encuentro entre un Extra Crispy McCrispy Strip y la cremosa salsa César. Si así suena, solo imagínate cómo sabe. Salsa César, en McDonald's por tiempo limitado. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
He's back. Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and that is correct. Deebo Samuel is once again a San Francisco 49er, donning the red and gold. He will once again also don the number 19 as confirmed by himself on social media. So you're getting two birds, one stone, folks. If you have that number 19 Deebo Samuel jersey, you can break it out once again because he is rocking 19 and he is now back with the San Francisco 49ers. It has been long speculated this is going to happen. The Ricky Pearsall injury had accelerated the movement of this deal, and we're going to break it all down for you in today's show. But first, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. And if you could, and if you want to see Deebo Samuel play for the San Francisco 49ers once again, use that promo code 49ers Access, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Green means good, red means bad. Find yourself a deal you like and use that promo code to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. 49ers Access. That's also the name of the podcast, and we're talking about Deebo Samuel re-signing with the San Francisco 49ers today on a one-year deal worth up to, very important phrase there, up to $7 million. My speculation is that the deal's probably around a $3 to $4 million deal. Give Deebo an opportunity to earn himself double the base salary and incentives. And I'm going to tell you this. If you've listened to the show for the most part of the offseason, really as recently as last week, maybe even as recent as the last couple episodes, you will know I was not advocating for the 49ers to make this move. I wasn't somebody saying, oh, you got to bring back Deebo. They should bring back Deebo Samuel. I was somebody that said, okay, you have Mike Evans, and then you'll see if the guys, mainly Ricky Pearsall and De'Zhaun Stribling, can grow or prove themselves for the first time in their young careers. And that was under the belief that Ricky Pearsall wasn't going to be out for, the entire year, which is not yet confirmed, but it's pretty understood, or at least the belief is that he'll be out for an elongated period of time, thus the Deebo Samuel signing. But with Pearsall now being injured for a while, hopefully not too long, but it seems like that's the case, the Niners had to turn. Like, there is a sense of desperation here. There's not many instant, walk on the football field impact wide receivers that can fit your offense, can do what you need them to do, that know what you want to do offensively. There's Tyreek Hill, who his latest report was that, he's having a hard time putting weight on his knee. Well, you're not going to bring that guy in here, and that's on top of the domestic violence charges he's had throughout his entire NFL career. Big character concern stuff there. Then there's Stephon Diggs, somebody who probably best fits what San Francisco wants to do if it meant simply replacing Ricky Pearsall, which, that's what they're trying to do here with Deebo Samuel. But there is a laundry list of character concerns there. He wasn't loved going back to his time with the Vikings. There is that infamous video of his teammates saying, "That's the guy I don't want dating my sister." Then there's the Buffalo Bills stuff, although it wasn't too much off the field. There was some issues with Josh Allen. He then gets traded away shortly after that. And even despite having a really good year last year with the Patriots, probably a guy who's going to price himself out of San Francisco's market, thus leading to Deebo Samuel now being back in the Bay. And look, I'm going to tell you this, the Niners lucked out. They really did luck out. If you told most teams, or if most teams were in San Francisco's shoes, they're not finding a Deebo Samuel. This is a unique situation that there just happens to be a player that used to play in San Francisco for darn near a decade, that is loved by the entire locker room, that is loved by the entire coaching staff, that has had an all-pro season, 5 years ago, that did 3 years ago still show a semblance of that former player, and even last year did have a little more juice to offer in the final year of a contract. It's not often you find players like that and can plug and play them into your offense. Like Deebo Samuel's not going to have a hard time walking into a new situation here in San Francisco and need a ramp-up process. Now, Deebo Samuel should be able to walk on the football field come Friday, assuming he'll practice tomorrow, or maybe Saturday morning when they practice, and he'll be able to plug and play immediately. And again, that's luck. It's also a luxury. Like the San Francisco 49ers lost their number 2 wide receiver, Ricky Pearsall, somebody they're banking on being one of the bigger dogs in their offense. And now with him out for however long he's out for, it's not really that important. You just know it's going to be a while. You don't really lose, or at least maybe the question marks surrounding Ricky Pearsall, even if the ceiling is higher, you do gain a much more confident floor. You know what you're getting from Deebo Samuel, even if it isn't great. You're getting a guy that can spark an offense, that can still be a good player in some capacity, and that is going to give you everything he has. Even at Deebo Samuel's worst, his complaints were, I want the football more. I want to be able to carry this offense more. I want to put the team on my back and be the guy still. If you're going to complain, that's what you want dudes to complain about. Now, there's obviously some nuances in there. You have to be able to perform at a high level still, and we'll get into a little bit more of that as the show goes on. But from a simple, being able to plug Deebo Samuel into this offense, the Niners got lucky, really lucky, that after losing one of their top dudes, Deebo's just waiting there. And that then turns into, what are the expectations for Deebo Samuel? He's over the age of 30, around the age of 30. He's a guy that, left San Francisco for the Commanders after being traded last offseason, and didn't have an amazing year in Washington. He certainly wasn't terrible, but he wasn't Deebo Samuel. He wasn't all-pro. He wasn't 2023 carry the team on your back Deebo Samuel he may believe he once was or still is. However, despite my withdrawals or my lack of enthusiasm towards a deal like this, it's hard not to be excited. It's hard not to see Deebo Samuel is going to be a San Francisco 49er again. And with the circumstances surrounding the receiver room, no Christian Kirk, no Ricky Pearsall for a while, and the uncertainty around Jacob Cowing and Jordan Watkins, and maybe you're relying on Mike Evans, who is 33 years old, and Demarcus Robinson again, and a young rookie De'Zhaun Stribling, plugging Deebo into that room is really exciting. Now, there's certainly a hard cap as to what he can be in this version of himself in 2026 for the 49ers, but, man, we're all on social media nowadays. We're all seeing the Instagram posts. We're all seeing the Twitter posts. We're all seeing George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, the rest of the boys out there in San Francisco hype up the return of Deebo Samuel. Deebo himself posting himself in red and gold once again, rocking the 1-9 with all of his teammates and a carousel of photos on Instagram, you're like, this feels good. This feels nice. There is a nostalgic love for Deebo Samuel. For me, it reminds me of when Indiana Jones came out. And while the performance, that movie wasn't very good, and the movie itself wasn't very good, there still was like this semblance of, but that's Indiana Jones. This is Deebo Samuel. Like, woo! It just feels right, you know? There are some players, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, like Michael Jordan looks right in a Bulls jersey. He didn't look right in a Wizards jersey. You know, if you're a San Francisco native, you know, Brandon Crawford just looked right in a Giants jersey, not in a Cardinals jersey. Deebo Samuel just looks right in a Niners jersey. He didn't look bad in a Commanders jersey by any means, but he just looks good in red and gold. It fits him. He is a San Francisco 49er, will always be a San Francisco 49er. But the expectation for him, you know, I'm not of the belief, or I'm not sitting back like, oh, Deebo's going to give us 1,000 yards and, oh, it's going to be prime Deebo once again. If you believe that, I love that for you, but maybe take a dip into the pool of reality for a second and realize who Deebo Samuel is in the year 2026. While maybe there is some more, dare I say, belief, or maybe there is reasons to think that Deebo Samuel, who's motivated now, had a whole offseason of not being signed, maybe took it personally, is in really good shape. Unlike Brandon Ayuk, he's out there posting videos on social media, working out, proving to teams of, hey, I can still play in the NFL. I think Deebo said himself, or there was speculation of, you know, I can play 3 or 4 more years, and I want to prove that in the league. And, you know, for Deebo, I think a lot of this is like, I want to reach 10 years because I want to have that lifetime insurance. That certainly is part of this, maybe to a smaller degree, but it's still there. But also as a competitive standpoint, like Deebo Samuel is a football player through and through. Deebo Samuel wants to go out there, lower his helmet, and just lay someone on the ground and be like, you can't touch me. That is the ferocity of which he's always played with, even if he wasn't healthy enough to be that same guy he was from, you know, 2019 to 2023. Deebo lives, breathes, bleeds football, and to have that not taken away, but to live in a place where you are unsigned for the first time in your career. You're not, people aren't lining up. Teams aren't lining up to sign you. That does take a hit to your pride. So maybe you are getting a more motivated Deebo Samuel. Maybe you are going to get, a better Deebo Samuel than we saw last year with the Washington Commanders. And, for a $3 or $4 million contract, bring a guy back home. If that's the case, that's a fantastic value for San Francisco. For the spot they're in, if you can get anything from Deebo Samuel, upwards of like 500 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns, that's not great by any means. But if that's an ancillary piece alongside Mike Evans, the returning George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, hopefully fully healthy, which you never know nowadays, and then Stribling growing alongside him, that's a really nice piece to have. He slides right into your Z position. He allows Stribling and Evans to move around a little bit in the offense and still be versatile on top of that. Now, I'm not going to go out there and claim Deebo Samuel's a route runner nowadays. We know exactly what he is. He's somebody who you want eating in the short yardage, middle of the football field, unafraid of contact. He's not going to stretch the field. He's not going to be a guy that can beat press coverage and, not somebody you want locked up against an opposing team's top cornerback, because more often than not, it's not going to work out in his favor nowadays with who he is as a player in 2026. But, Deebo can still go out there and get it done. I think one issue a lot of people saw last year with the 49ers, one problem I've heard people bring up recently is like the Niners didn't have a spark offensively. Well, you can think what you want of Deebo Samuel, the player nowadays, and I think we'd all believe that he isn't the guy he once was, but they're not going to lack a mouthpiece. They're not going to lack heart and fight. We'll see how long that heart and fight can stay on the football field in 2026, but you have Christian McCaffrey, who's a big spark plug. You have George Kittle once he comes back, who is the lifeblood of this offense. Then you have Brock Purdy, and then you have or then you have Deebo Samuel onto it. Like, that matters. While maybe things ended in a somewhat negative light, you look at how Deebo Samuel left, complaining about touches and whatnot. Even after that, he's on social media. He's not burning bridges. He's thanking all of his notable teammates. He's shouting out, teammates he's leaving in San Francisco. He's shouting out the coaching staff and the GM and thanking them for the opportunity of being on the 49ers and what they've given to him. Like, Deebo Samuel has come across to me almost his entire career, even through trade negotiations and contract negotiations, very grateful to be in the position he's in. And he takes poor play personally. You can go back to how he was in 2022 after his big contract. He walked into a press conference saying he was terrible the year prior. He walked into a press conference saying, I never want to put that on film again. And then he was trash. So now you marry that with a guy that was in free agency for the entire time, was on the cusp of being on the open market for nearly 8 months of a calendar year and jobless, trying to prove himself to teams. And while it took an injury to occur to get him on the San Francisco 49ers again, maybe you are going to get a little bit more from Deebo Samuel than I assumed or believed you would, or at least I was hoping they'd get, because they now need Deebo. We talked about this a lot when they didn't, necessarily need him on the roster, not knowing Pearsall is going to be out for a long time. Like, did you want to lock in 6-7 guys already to roster spots? Well, now that Pearsall is going to be out for a while, you don't mind having Deebo there. It's a luxury having Deebo there. And even Deebo last season, going back to the spark stuff with the Niners offense and them missing the energy at times, Deebo Samuel, even on the decline, even if he is almost identical to who he was last year, he's still ranked 7th in YAC amongst wide receivers. And if the Niners are going to have Mike Evans being the big body receiver, can get downfield, Stribling being the speedy, physical guy that may assume the Ricky Pearsall role to some degree, or at least move around and be unreliable at times, being so young in the offense, you plug in Deebo, you do retain, or even maybe in some extent gain, some dynamicism to your offense. Like, I can almost make the case San Francisco is more dynamic today than they were pre-Pearsall injury. Now, I think Pearsall's ceiling is much higher, different player than Deebo wholeheartedly, but I think if you're getting the best of, or 75-80% of what Deebo once was, you are getting still, even at the age of, near 30, 31 years old, still one of the more dynamic offensive players in football. That said, despite the butterflies, the good feelings, the positivity, which all that exists, I can't wait to watch Deebo Samuel. Hopefully he's healthy by the time week 1 comes around, run out of that tunnel in Australia playing the Rams. And it's quite fitting that his first game back for the San Francisco 49ers will be against the Rams. If he makes the roster, which you assume he will, knowing how this roster is currently constructed and knowing who's now out for a long time, that being Pearsall. But the one thing, or one of the caveats, negatives, questions, I guess you can word it that way, I have, and I've had about the thought of bringing in Deebo Samuel was his usage. We already know Deebo isn't the route runner. We already know he's not somebody you want out there slicing and dicing and being the guy you believe can get open against, press coverage and beat the best top corners in football. But on top of that, and this is more of a Kyle Shanahan problem, one of my biggest knocks on the potential of signing Deebo Samuel, which is now a reality, is how does Shanahan use him? Is this a reversion back to what Shanahan believed he was and what Deebo Samuel used to be in 2021, the over-reliance on him that lingered far too much into the 2022, 23, and 24 seasons? Is there going to be this, game plan centered around Deebo? And if that, for whatever reason, fails, it gets hurt, the opposing defense could take him away, then you're stunted as an offense. That can't happen. So while there is some positivity, there is this Deebo's back. The thought of what this could be for the Niners roster and offense, there is some drawbacks where maybe the drawbacks to Pearsall was, there's injury concerns, there's questions. There wasn't so much usage concerns. With Deebo, there is legitimate, eyebrow-raising things to consider because we all know Kyle Shanahan, for better or for worse, is a creature of habit. And if he's out there calling plays week 1 through 18, which you assume so, despite the accident he had in the collision with the woman in his car, that sometimes Kyle can't help himself. And there will be this thought of, Deebo can still carry us, and Deebo can still be the top dog in the offense, which should no longer be the case. You brought in Stribling for a reason. While you have Christian McCaffrey there, sure. You also brought in Mike Evans for a reason. While Deebo makes you more dangerous, he is another bullet, that is ready to get fired off in the gun, right? You are now, 3 or 4 or 5 guys deep that are all different. He is another piece of the Swiss Army knife offense San Francisco is hoping to build. That doesn't mean this is the guy that you walk into, week 10 against the Seattle Seahawks at Lumen Field saying, carry us to victory. He's somebody who, if he signs, and now that he is signed, can give you 50 receptions, 60 receptions at best, I believe, for, 700, 600 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns through the air, and maybe 1 or 2 on the ground. You're going to be in a good spot. That's a 7-touchdown player. That's a 700 yard player, whether it is through the ground or through the air. That's a guy that can help you win football games. What you don't want, though, is, okay, Mike Evans gets sidelined for Deebo, or more importantly here, you don't want to see the growth, the implementation of De'Zhaun Stribling removed from the offense because, Deebo's here. And they have somewhat similar skill sets, so Stribling doesn't see the field because Deebo's here. It's a 1-year deal for a guy who's over the age of 30 that is likely not going to be here in 2027. Now, that can change if Deebo plays great football, but there are some, lingering thoughts that while this is a good thing, while San Francisco needs a player like Deebo Samuel in the wake of Ricky Pearsall's injury,
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at Accenture.com/Spotify.
I don't want to see an offense where Deebo Samuel's in the backfield, 6 times a game getting tackled for loss and 4 of those carries, because that happened a lot towards the end of his tenure in San Francisco the first time. And, I think we've often compared this to, do you want to be reliant on a nostalgia act to carry you, or a nostalgia act to sell tickets and be your number 4 hitter in your offense, if you want to use MLB terms, because some teams in baseball fall into that trap. Some team in football fall into that trap, right? How many wide receivers have gone to the Tennessee Titans or the Colts in the last 20 years and they're over the age of 30, they're past their prime, and you're like, holy hell, who's that? Randy Moss at 35, Andre Johnson at 33. These guys can't play anymore. My God, DeAndre Hopkins, like, what is happening? And I'm not hoping or saying that'll be Deebo Samuel. I think Deebo has more to offer than all those guys did for the Titans and Colts in those years. But all that to say, Shanahan needs to be honest with himself as to who Deebo Samuel is in the year of 2026. He's not a 22-year-old, 23-year-old rookie out of South Carolina. He's not a 5-year-old, 26-year-old all-pro anymore. He is 30, 31 years old. He is somebody that has injuries and likely can't touch the football 12 times a game, every game. If you're getting 4 to 5 receptions from Deebo Samuel in what you believe to be a drop-back offense or a more drop-back focused passing attack nowadays, that's a good year. You do the averages there, you do the math there, that's a solid year for Deebo Samuel. The other side of this, and this goes back into the expectations Deebo Samuel, not that we have for him, but that he has for himself. What Deebo Samuel are you getting, not physically, but mentally? Now, I'd like to believe, knowing the context of him being a free agent for as long as he was and him waiting for a job as long as he has, you are going to get a more mentally mature Deebo Samuel that is understanding of his spot on the roster, understands I'm not the number one wide receiver, I'm the number 2 at days, I may be the number 3. I may get the football twice a game for a few weeks. Is he going to be okay with that? Now, again, I'm hoping so. But sometimes, even the best of us, including myself, ego gets in the way. Pride gets in the way. Now, maybe being a free agent for as long as he was, maybe he had to swallow some pride a little bit. Maybe he was thinking, like, I'm Deebo Samuel, and throughout this process, it's like, yeah, I'm Deebo Samuel, but maybe he's had to look himself in the mirror and say, that only gets you so far nowadays. Now, that may get you further in San Francisco than, say, Washington or a different, receiver-needy offense, but I'm just hoping that this is not, despite the good feelings, despite me liking Deebo, like I'm genuinely excited that Deebo Samuel is a San Francisco 49er. I wish it was different context. I wish it was under the guise that Ricky Pearsall was also healthy. And if Deebo's your 4 or your 3, you're feeling even better about this. But now that he's likely your 2, maybe your 3, if Stribling grows really fast, that a little less exciting, but certainly it's still fun. Certainly it's still enjoyable. I'm sure a lot of people out there are like, Deebo Samuel's a San Francisco 49er again? Let's freaking go, baby. Bust out the 1-9. Now, to continue the discussion a little bit, we talked about this next topic a lot when this thought of bringing Deebo back was maybe a little less in, or a little less aligning with reality, or a little less certain now that it's guaranteed it's happening. The thought was that the one thing you can't do is make Stribling irrelevant because Deebo is now on the roster. I want to add to that because I do think Deebo Samuel can also, alongside Mike Evans, help Stribling grow, right? While playing should be a big role in his growth, I do think having somebody like Deebo that knows the offense, knows where to be, knows what Kyle likes at the wide receiver position, that should be able to help Stribling grow into the offense a lot more. You saw, and I have no idea how much of this is a Deebo Samuel thing. It's probably more of these certain players because there is a lot of examples of it not working out for a lot of guys in that room. But the Niners drafted, I believe, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4 wide receivers. 5 technically if you want to count Pearsall in this, but I'm going to call it 4 simply because Pearsall and Deebo shared one season together. But the Niners drafted 4 wide receivers, I believe, post Deebo Samuel. That being Danny Gray, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, and Ronnie Bell. And while Ronnie Bell didn't work out being a 7th-round draft pick, that's to be expected, and Danny Gray flamed out pretty quickly, you did see Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings be able, whether under Deebo's tutelage or not, make a very quick impact into the offense. Whether rookie years or year 2, those 2 guys were able to quickly become mainstays, get second contracts, some of them burn bridges, and in Juwan Jennings' case, get another contract elsewhere in free agency after a near 1,000-yard season 2 years ago and grow into a near Super Bowl MVP. So whether that's Deebo or not, I'm not entirely sure, but we do know Deebo is one to wrap his arms around young wide receivers. I'm hoping Stribling is the next example of that, and on the spectrum closer to Juwan and Ayuk. Maybe not so much in Ayuk's case mentally right now, but physically from a playing standpoint when he was wanting to be a San Francisco 49er, and lesser so towards Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell, 2 guys, mainly in Gray's case, that just didn't have it physically or mentally. I think Stribling, from what he's shown through 3 days, is already surpassed what Bell and Gray did in their very short times in San Francisco, and more equivalent to the likes of Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. So, again, that's more speculation on my behalf, excuse me. But I do think that there is something there. Like, now Stribling isn't in a room with Mike Evans and Christian Kirk and Ricky Pearsall, who can never stay healthy, and Jordan Watkins and Cowing. Now you're behind, essentially, on the depth chart, or now surrounded by Mike Evans, Deebo Samuel, Christian Kirk, and DeMarcus Robinson. And you can debate how good that room will be in 2026. It's probably not going to be fantastic, to be honest with you. Mike Evans has some injury concerns. Stribling is healthy, but he's a young player. Christian Kirk's already hurt. And DeMarcus Robinson is a receiver 4 or 5 at this point in time in his career, despite maybe giving you some more comfort that he is there in the absence of Pearsall. That said, from a mental transitional stage in Stribling's career, I'm a little more confident in him being surrounded by Deebo and Evans and Kirk and Robinson more than I was maybe him being in a room that could have potentially had Evans, which is great in his own right, Kirk, Pearsall, who has yet to find his footing, and at that point in time, that being 4 days ago before the injury news, was probably going to be a little bit more focused on getting himself a next paycheck, or at least getting himself, a little more established in the league. And so, and look, that's no knock on Pearsall either. I wish he was still healthy. I wish the San Francisco 49ers didn't need Deebo Samuel, but he's here now. And he can still offer San Francisco something that now with Pearsall being out, they do need. And you could have made the case that they needed a player like Deebo or another receiver anyways, because of the unproven nature of Jacob Cowing and Jordan Watkins. Even if you believe in those guys' skill sets, they have done nothing in the NFL. And having somebody like Deebo, even if Pearsall was healthy, would have given you and I certainly a lot more confidence in the room. Now with Pearsall out, there is a less of a concern of him blocking somebody, unless it is Stribling, which I don't think's like San Francisco on paper. If they're running out there Deebo, Evans, and Stribling as their top 3 guys, that is a very physically imposing receiving core. There is not a small body in that room. That room may lack route running ability, but that is a physically imposing, we're going to run the football down your throat, smash mouth, all gas, no brakes, lower the helmet, and hopefully chip off some face masks and, beat you into the dirt type of football receiving core. So there's a lot to like. There are some concerns, there are some questions, and mainly coming from what Deebo do you get mentally, lesser than what you get him physically. And then really the big question is, how does Shanahan utilize him, and how does he view Deebo now? Can he come to terms with Deebo Samuel not being the guy that would derail game plans if he got hurt early in the first or second quarter? Because Deebo Samuel at this point in time can still offer San Francisco some yak, can still give them some explosive plays on offense, can still give you the end-around stuff if you pick and choose your points, can still be a wide back 1 to 2 times per game. And I'm hoping now that San Francisco has Mike Evans and has Stribling, those things work more often if Shanahan feels the need to rely on those types of plays again. But what do you make of Deebo Samuel being back in San Francisco? It's a really cheap deal, incentive-based. Do you think he walks back on the football field and says, I'm home, I'm Deebo Samuel, this is where I made my bread and butter? And to some degree, Levi Stadium is kind of the house that Deebo built in a way. Now, it's more of the house that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch built, but Deebo was a very important part into the reestablishing and the regrowth of San Francisco 49er football prominence around the NFL. Deebo Samuel walks onto that field, Levi's, the energy shifts, the aura changes. You go, oh, now we mean business. So what do you make of Deebo Samuel being back in San Francisco? Do you like it? Do you think maybe they should have gone a different direction? Do you think they still need to add somebody? And what do you dislike about it? Are you in the camp, like myself, that despite liking getting Deebo back, you do have some reservations, not from him, but from Kyle Shanahan? Drop your thoughts in the chat, the comments down below. Leave us that 5-star audio podcast review. Tag us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And I can tell you this, from talking to fans, from our Instagram posts, our social media posts, the fan base seems overjoyed. And Deebo now gets a chance to erase a little bit of that, stain that was 2024, and maybe gets to end his Niner tenure on much better terms from a fan perspective. But that doesn't seem to matter. Like, fans, maybe there's some that don't forget. I'm certainly one of them. But for the most part, and this includes myself as well, it feels really nice to see Deebo Samuel back in San Francisco. He is a San Francisco 49er. He always will be, and he is once again. Like I said, drop your thoughts down below. Are you happy San Francisco gets to get a little more Deebo Samuel back in their life? Are you happy that you can now tell opposing defenses, they can tell opposing defenses, tuck your chains, because Deebo's coming, and he's riding that bike around the neighborhood again, around Levi Stadium, saying it's game day? Like, that just means something. When you hear the words Deebo Samuel, you think of hard-nosed, smash-mouth San Francisco 49er football. And if they can reestablish that to some degree, to some capacity again, it should be another fun year. And even if it's not, just having Deebo back for 1 year, there is no drawback to this. There is no net negative in this. If Deebo Samuel walks on the field and sucks, so what? You're not wasting any money. You're not tied to him long term. This is a win-win deal with almost a 0% chance of it being a losing deal for the San Francisco 49ers. But drop your thoughts down below. Tell us how you feel. Deebo's back, baby. He's back in San Francisco. Do you have the jersey out? Are you marking out right now? Are you going to work today wearing the 1-9 because you're that happy that Deebo's back in San Francisco? Will you buy tickets to watch Deebo once again? And can you not wait to say the words, Deebo, Deebo, when he walks on the field back at Levi Stadium in 2026. I know I can't wait. Football is here. Day 4 of training camp is tomorrow. When you're listening to this, it will be today. Hopefully we'll have some coverage for you again for day 4 and 5, and maybe the re-debut of Deebo Samuel as soon as this weekend. He already posted on social media his bags are packed. He's headed back to the Bay, so it could be Friday, but it also could be Saturday. Nevertheless, you do not want to leave, and you do want to stay tuned because we're going to have training camp coverage nearly every single day. From camp breakdowns, positional battles in camp, you are not going to want to miss as we break down every little nitpick, every little news that's coming out about the San Francisco 49ers in training camp of 2026. That said, my name is Sterling Bennett, and as always, until next time, welcome back, Deebo, and stay faithful.